Hey everyone, I'm RR and welcome back to another plugin coding guide video. Today we'll be looking at the fourth installation of the RPG plugin coding guide series. We'll be diving into mob spawning as well as making custom mobs, and on the side, just a little bit of custom loot items, maybe a little bit of changing the mob's health and whatnot. And first and foremost, I just want to say that I originally intended to include my regions plugin video content into this one, but then it seems too much. So me and my friend has built a custom world that is around 21 by 21. I'm not sure about the exact dimensions, but we're just be using that as our region today. So I'm not going to be doing any region setup. That is our region, and I'll be doing a little hack as you'll see later on in the video. And lastly, I'll be using IntelliJ IDEA as my IDE, as well as Spigot 1.16.5 as my coding library. If you're using any other version of Spigot 1.8, 1.12, 1.15 or whatnot, go ahead, it should be fine. Let's get right into coding. So first and foremost, here I have a basic setup. So I have a main class, the main package, as well as the plugin.yml. So this has a name, version, as well as the main, the path to the main class. If you have no idea what any of these three things is, you don't know what on-enable is, you don't know what is Java plugin, you probably should not be watching this video. Go watch my previous videos where I teach you how to set up a basic setup, or you just go read up on how to make a simple plugin. So anyways, without further ado, let's go ahead. First thing first, I just want to specify that this plugin is going to be using 1.13 and above, so we're not going to be using any legacy items from 1.8.9. So we can go ahead and close this. And I've just told IntelliJ IDEA to how to build this. So I have 1.16.5 as my library, and I told it to include whatever we coded, as well as the plugin.yml as the compound output. Right, sweet. First up, we're going to create a utilities class, or rather, I'm going to create a utility class. You don't have to do this, but if you've been with me for this long, you should know that the utilities class is basically my friend in every single plugin coding guide video. So let's go ahead and create the methods. And done. I'll just be creating two methods today. I'll be coming back later on to add more methods as we go on, but the first two is color and message player. What color does is it changes a string into the specific color code. So and A will be lime and B will be aqua. And the reason why I do this is just so that I don't have to type this really long sentence every time I want to color a string. I just have to type this. And the second one is just to send a bunch of strings which are color coded to a player. And it's the same thing. I don't have to type everything out, and it's kind of useful to have this. So that's all for the utility class for now. We can jump back to the main class and we can dive right into mob spawning. So first up, we're going to create a method called spawn mobs, and then it's going to have the first one being size, the second one being mob cap, and the third one being spawn time. So what these three variables are, the first one is going to define how big our region is. So in this case, our region is like 18 or 20 times by 20 blocks, so this one will probably be 9 or 10. The mob cap specifies how many mobs can be in that region at any one point of time. So by default, I think I'll set this to 10. So only 10 mobs can be in that region at any one time. And then spawn time variable, this one changes the amount of time each spawn cycle will be. So by default, I'll put this on 5 seconds. So every 5 seconds, the game will try to spawn mobs in that region. So how do we do that? First up, let's go ahead and create a bucket runnable. And this will create the timer that we need. So plugin will be this, 0 long, and then the period will be the spawn time. Right off the bat, I want to store this in a global variable. So let's create a global variable for this. Private bucket task. And this really isn't needed at all, but I just want to have a global variable here. So I can access this and cancel the task at any one point of time if I want to say cancel the spawning later on. And then let's go ahead and create the mandatory run method that all bucket runnables need to have. And then in here can be our spawning algorithm. So let's just write that down. Spawning algorithm. Technically isn't an algorithm, but Alright, so what I want to do is, based on the amount of mobs that can be in that region, I want to spawn a random amount from 0 to this mob capacity. So let's say you want 10 mobs at maximum to be in the region. So every 5 seconds, you can spawn from 0 to 10 mobs. So what we can do here is we can have integer, and then we can have amount. Okay, just call it spawn amount equals to math.random times mob cap plus 1. And this, in case it's in brackets, because order of operations, this one will be applied first before this. And then let's just cast the entire thing to an integer, because this returns like a double. Okay, so what this does, math.random returns a number from 0 inclusive to 1 exclusive. So it's 0 to 0.999999999. And then what this does is adds 1 to mob cap. So let's say it's 10. This would be 11 now. So it will generate a random number from 0 to 10 after it's been cast to an integer. So all you need to know, this short line, spawn amount will be from 0 to mob cap. So 0 to 10 in this case. So we can go ahead and start spawning. So we're going to need a count variable. And this will count and keep track how many mobs were spawned so far. So we're going to need a while loop. So while count is less or equals to spawn amount, count plus plus. So what this does, this small little while loop just counts from 0 all the way to the random spawn amount. So it'll keep counting until it's done. So right here, we can go ahead and do our spawning. So how do we do our spawning? So for our case, we can just go ahead and spawn a random spot on that 20 by 20 area. So on one corner, all the way to the other corner, we just select a random spot, so a random X and a random Z, and then we just get the highest block and spawn a mob there. So right down here, we're going to create a private integer. So the method is going to return an integer. We're going to call this get random with negative. We call this int size. So what this does is just generates a number from negative size to positive size. So let's say the size is 10. It'll generate a random integer from negative 10 to positive 10, both inclusive. So the way to do this is do integer random equals integer math.random times size plus 1. And then if math.random is more than 0.5, then we times equals -1 here. So this line just creates a random integer from 0 to size. And then this one says flip a coin. If it hits, just add a negative to it. So it just creates a random negative. Then lastly, we just return this integer. So in summary, this method just returns an integer from negative size to positive size. And we can use that in here. So we can go ahead and do integer random x equals to get random with negative size. And since this is a square region, we can just use the same thing again. So random z would be random with negative size again. So now we have a random x and a random z value. So now we can go ahead and grab the block that is related to that. So right off the bat, up here, we're going to need a world variable. And then over here on enable, we're going to need to get the world. So bucket dot get world. So now when the plugin starts, this world variable is going to be assigned to the default world, to the world named world. And over here, we're going to go ahead and do block, import the correct one. Block equals to world.get highest block at run x and at run z. There we go. So now we have a random block in that chunk of region, and we can just go ahead and do spawning over there. So let's go ahead and get the location of this. Location, let's just call it lock. Let's just call it lock. Block.get location. And remember, this is just a random block in that region. We want to spawn it above that block. So we got to go ahead and clone that and then add 1 on the y-axis. So that should spawn it correctly now. Okay, now we can go ahead and spawn the mob. So let's do location, role.spawn entity. And then the location would just be the location. In the entity type, we're just going to put something like, zombie for now. All right. And then in the onEnable method, let's go ahead and call this. So what's the size of our region? I'm just going to put 9. I could put 10, but then it will start spawning into the barrier later on and it'll just start suffocating. So I'm just going to put 9. What is the mob capacity? I'll just put it as 10. So What is the spawn time? I'll just do, say, 5 times 20, which means 5 seconds, because there's 20 ticks in 1 Minecraft second. So every 5 seconds, you'll try to spawn this. Alright, so let's go ahead and build, and I'll see you in the server. Alright, there we go. As you can see, the mobs are spawning, and immediately you can see what's going on. Yeah, those mobs just spawned. That one has an iron sword. You can't see the problem. It works, but you can see this is a lot more than 10, right? They're spawning like a range of 0 to 10 every 5 seconds. So this is not what we want. What we want to do is we only want to limit the amount of mobs here to 10. So let's go ahead and jump back into the IDE and change that. Alright, we're back. And the problem here was that we're not tracking how many mobs that we're spawning, and therefore our count just does not get affected by it. So what we need to do here is over here in the global variable area, let's create a list, not lightning strike, a list of, oh my god, a list of entity. We call this entities or whatever you want. We're just going to keep track of all the entities that we spawn and just chuck them into this array list. So every time we spawn one entity here, just go ahead and chuck that into entities. So .net, and then let's surround this. Okay, so let's say the first time this runnable spawns, it spawns 5, and it will add 5 mobs into this entity array list. So the next time it spawns, we only want it to limit to 5 at the very maximum, because our mob cap is 10. So it can only spawn 0 to 5 on the next one. And the way to do this is to change this variable to another different variable. So let's just call this difference. I'm just going to call it diff. And up here we're going to do int diff equals mob cap, so the maximum amount of mobs that we can have at any point of time minus entities.size. So now we have the difference between the maximum of mobs and the mobs we already spawned. So this is the amount of mobs that we can spawn. So if the amount of mobs that we can spawn is 0 or lesser, then we don't want to spawn any more mobs. Make sense? Makes sense. Okay, and now we can go ahead and build the project, and I'll see you back in the server. Alright, I'm back in the server, and right off the bat you can see there are a lot less mobs being spawned. Let's go ahead and count them. We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, there's 1 in there, 9. And there's 1 over there, so 10 in total. So there are only maximum of 10 mobs that can be spawned at once. So let me just go ahead and give myself a strength right now. So if we start killing the entities, you can see that, well, the timer isn't spawning any more mobs, and that's because we did not track which entities are dead, and then therefore subtracted from the array list. So right now, the game still thinks that there are 10 mobs, even though I just killed all of them. And yeah, it's not spawning anything else. So let's go ahead and fix that. Let's jump back into the IDE. Alright, we're back in the IDE. So we need a way to go ahead and tell the plugin that the entities died. So one way you can do this is before you spawn, you just want to check how many entities are dead or invalid. So let's go ahead and loop through all the entities in here. Entities. So look through all the stored entities and check whether or not they are invalid or they are dead. So it's dead. And if they are, we will go on and remove them from this array list. So we can't remove them right off the bat while we're iterating, because that will cause a concurrent exception or something like that. So what we have to do is, let's go ahead and create a list of entities over here. Call this removal. And then if they're dead or they're invalid, we'll put them into the removal array list. And after we're done looping, we go ahead and remove everything in the removal array list from the original array list. So let's just do this. If you're confused with what that does, all this does is, before we spawn, we just want to check which ones are dead or invalid, and if they are, we just remove them from here. So we don't keep tracking this as the maximum amount. So let's go ahead and build this, and I'll see you in the server. It should be fixed. And we're back in the server. As you can see, there are the maximum amount of mobs right now: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. So if I start killing them right now, we should see more start spawning. So let's just go ahead and kill everything that is not a player. There we go. You can see one spawn in there. It spawned in the characters, which is a little bit unfortunate. 2, 3, 4. You can see that the spawn cycle is working. If I kill them again, yep, more spawning. And you can see that each time the location is random. So one thing to note, as you can see, is when they spawn, they always spawn at the corner of the block. And this is actually technically not the center of the block. We want them to spawn anywhere within this block, so they're kind of like random. They don't always spawn in the middle. As you can see, so this one spawned in the middle, that one spawned right in the middle, this one spawned in the middle, right in front of us. So yeah, we want to go ahead and randomize the way they spawn, and we can do that using a simple little technique. Alright, we're back. So the way we can do this is, while you're spawning this, after you generate the random locations, what you can do is down here, just have double, we can call this X offset, as well as Z offset. We can go ahead and create random integers for this. So what I'm going to do is, I'm going to duplicate this method that I have here. I'm going to call this get random offset. And what this does, I'm just going to change this to math.random. We don't need this. Double, I'm going to call this random. Change this to double, and there we go. So what this does is it just generates a random integer from negative 0.999999 all the way to positive 0.99999. So it's going to be random from the corner of a block all the way to the other corner of the block. So go ahead and do this. So we don't need this variable anymore. I'm just going to go ahead and call get random offset on both of these. And let's go ahead and move this up, and then we can go ahead and add the random offsets over here. So now they won't always spawn at the corner of the block, they'll spawn randomly anywhere in the block. So let's go ahead and build and see whether this works. Grab it back, and let's go ahead and see whether or not they spawn correctly. So let's go ahead and let's kill this. Alright, and let's see. Yep, that guy did not spawn in the center, he spawned into the block. Let's see if we can get another one to spawn. You can see they do not spawn in the corner of the block anymore. This guy spawned in the center. Let's go and kill them again. Let's try to get one to spawn right in front of me. Oh, there we go. You can see that they no longer spawn at the corner. I've been trying to like kill them for a while to just get one to spawn in front of me. But this guy spawned right over there, so it's not at the corner. The random offset kind of works. So yeah, we can go ahead and call it a success. But yeah, that's custom mob spawning done. Now we just need to get the custom mobs, because to be frank, having regular zombies, that is just kind of, it's alright, but it's kind of boring. So what if we have our own custom mobs? So that's exactly what we're going to do. Let's jump back into the IDE. Right, so we're back in here, so let's go ahead and create a package, and we just call this components. And then we're going to create a class, or rather an enum class, called custom mob. So in here, we're going to have all the custom mobs that we want, and then they're going to have a few specific properties. So the first property they're going to have is a custom name. Then they're going to have max health. Then they're going to have entity type. So there's a type of entity they are. In the example, we just use all zombies, but we can go ahead and change the entity type for however we want. And also over here, we want to do is we want to control the spawn chance of this. And that's because the amount of mobs that we have in here, we're going to have 4 different mobs, and each of them have a specific spawn chance. So the basic one will be, well, really regular, it spawns everywhere. Then the really rare one will have a low spawn chance. So that's what this variable is for. And we're going to have a few other variables as well, namely a list of something, and this would be called the loot table. So this is the stuff that they drop. Okay, array list. So what do you want them to drop? We're just going to put that in there. Then we also want them to hold something, so item stack, main item, and we also want to control what armor they wear, so armor. And these are just the basic stuff that I use. You can go ahead and extend this to have a lot of other things, like maybe custom XP drops, or maybe something like custom durability weapons. So, but right now what we're going to do is just going to have a simple loot item system. So in the components, let's create a loot item class. And what this does is it's going to create a loot item. So we just want the type of item to be dropped, as well as the amount. So we'll have a minimum range and a maximum range, because let's say we want this zombie to drop, say 1 to 3 pieces of rotten flesh. So minimum, maximum. And then we're going to set this to 1 by default. And you'll see why that matters later on. And then we'll also have a spawn chance for this. We can put double float, I'm just going to put double. Spawn chance. And then lastly, we have a private static random. Randomizer equals new random. And what this is just an object to help us generate random integers. And why it's static is because we only need one object for the use of every single loot item. We don't need to create a new random object and waste resources every time we create a new loot item. So let's go ahead and do the constructor. So the first constructor we have is just going to have this and this. So we'll only specify the loot item as well as spawn chance, and we'll use this constructor whenever we want it to drop 1 and 1 only. And then the second constructor is going to have everything. Okay, actually I think I should just change this to a drop rate instead of spawn chance. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to refactor this variable to something like drop rate. Let's select everything. What this does is just change all the references here to drop rate instead of spawn chance. Right, lastly, we just need to go ahead and create a try drop item method that takes in location as the variable. And then what this does is it's going to try to drop the item. So to do the RNG, we just do if math.random times 101. And why this is not 100 but is 101 is because math.random returns 0 to 0.99999. So the maximum value you can get out of this equation will be 0 to 100. And if you put 100 here, then the maximum value, the range that you can get is 0 to 99. And we want it to be 100. So put 101 here. And if it's more than spawn chance, or if it's more than drop rate, just go ahead and return, because this means that your RNG did not work. We wanted it to be below the drop rate. So let's say the drop rate is say 75% chance. So if math.random generates a integer from 0 to 75, it means a 75% chance drop rate worked, and you can spawn an item. If it's any higher than that, it means it's the remaining 25% chance, and the RNG did not work out in your favor. It did not drop the item. Right, so let's go ahead and drop the item here. So what we can do is something like location.getWorld.drop item. And we're going to use drop item naturally, so it has a little like velocity, random velocity. Then we pass in location as well as the item stack. Now we can just pass an item like that, but that would just be the item that we passed in, which is usually just one item. But remember that we want to have a range, so a minimum to a maximum amount, say 1 to 3 rotten flesh. So let's go ahead and randomize that. So what we can do here is item stack item equals to this.item.clone. So we clone the item that we want to be dropped, and then we set a random amount as its amount. So we can go ahead and do amount, and then up here we can create an integer amount variable that is equals to randomizer.nextInt, and the bound will be max minus min plus 1 plus min. And if you're not sure what this does, you can go ahead and run this by yourself. All it does is this amount variable will be between the minimum as well as the maximum range. So let's go ahead and see if amount is 0. So if amount is 0, obviously it means that there's no item. Then we'll just do return, because we can't drop that item if there's 0 of the amount. But if it's more than that, we can go and set the amount and then drop the item naturally. Right, so that's the loot item class done, and we just go and pass in loot item here and import list, and we're golden. So next up, what we're going to do is going to have a constructor for this enum class. I'm going to do everything here. And on top of that, we want to see how many loot items each mob has. So we just do something like loot item, then do an ellipsis here, loot items, and then we can do something like, let's just take this out actually. We don't need this, and then loot table equals to arrays.aslist loot items. And what this will do is it will convert all the loot items that we put in one by one, convert it all into an array list and store it over here. So that's pretty useful. So next up, we're going to need a drop loot item, or rather try drop loot, and then location as a variable. So all this is going to do is just going to go over the amount of loot items in the loot table that this mob has. Sorry, loot table. And it's going to try to drop them for each one of them. So something like this. So let's say this zombie has 5 different items that it can drop. So it's going to go through all of these 5 items and try to drop them. Alright, so lastly or not the least, we're going to need to get the name. And this will be for later on when we do something like custom health bars and whatnot. Okay, and we're just going to need a spawn method here. So let's return a living entity. We call this spawn. And we need a location because we need to spawn that at the location. So living entity equals to living entity. And location.get world.spawn entity. Location as well as the entity type. And we're very sure that all of the mobs that we're going to spawn here are living entities, i.e. they have health. So I'm just going to directly cast this as living entity. Usually this method returns an entity instead of living entity, but all the mobs I'm going to create are going to be living entities. So I'm just going to directly cast them right now. Then you can do some things like set custom name, visible equals to true. Then you can go ahead and set the custom name to something like, so we can set the custom name to something like color. Let's just import the color method. Then we want it to be the name plus the amount of health it has. So we just do name and then an R to reset all the color codes. Then we're going to do a nice light red for the hearts. And then we do plus integer, max health, and then slash, and then integer max health. And then we just put a heart symbol here. And I got this heart symbol from the internet. It's a UTF character, so you can just copy it from the internet and just paste it in here. And what this does is it casts the double to an integer, so you don't have like point something. So let's say the max health is 20, you don't get 20.0 out of 20.0. You just have 20/20, and that looks nice. So that's the name done. Then we can go ahead and set the health of it as well. So get attribute.generic max health, and we set it as max health. Then obviously we can scale the health according to the max health, so let's do that as well. So one of these will set the maximum health, and one of these will set the actual health. So okay, and next up we're going to need to go ahead and set the equipment of this. So we'll just do something like entity equipment. So this is sort of like an inventory, so I'm just going to call this inv for an inventory. Then we get it from entity.getEquipment. So we can set the armor, the hand, the offhand, and whatnot. So we just do if armor not equals to null. Inf.set armor contents will be the armor. And we have to do an if check here because set armor contents cannot receive a null as an item. So if you put null as armor, it says not null here, then you'll generate an error. So yeah. Then we go ahead and set the armor contents drop rate. So set drop rate for everything to 0. Set helmet drop chance, set chest plate drop chance, set leggings drop chance, all to 0 so they don't drop their armor. We'll handle drop rates ourselves. And then inf.set item in main hand, and this one can accept a null as a value, so we don't need an if check for this. We just straight away pass him main item. And then obviously want to set main hand drop chance to 0. We'll handle all the dropping in here by ourselves. We don't need Minecraft to handle the dropping for us. So that's all. We just need to do return entity, and that should be it. Okay, and before I forget, down here let's just create 2 getters, one for max health and one for spawn chance, and this will be needed later on in the main class, so we can assess the spawn chance, so we can determine which mob to spawn, and we can go ahead and get the max health to determine their health bar. When we hit them, we want the health bar to change. So this is not useful right now, but later on we'll be using it, so Remember to add these in. And up here we can start go ahead and create our mobs. Alright, and the first one I'm gonna do is something called, I'm just gonna call this something fancy like Desert Risen. And then the name is just gonna be a gold colored Desert Risen. N6 is gold. The health, I'm gonna put this as about 15 since it's like a starter level mob. I don't want it to have too much health. So 15 is about 7.5 hearts. Spawn chance, I'm gonna put this at about 60% chance. And then for the entity type, I'm just gonna put this as a husk since it fits like the desert theme. I don't want it a zombie. I'm just gonna put a husk in here. It should not be holding anything and it should not have any armor. Then we need to put some loot items here. So I wanted to drop rotten flesh, but not just random rotten flesh from normal Minecraft. So here's when custom item comes into play. So let's go back into our utilities class and let's create a method that generates an item for us. So item stack, and then we do create item, and then we just do material of the item, and then the amount of the item. Then we use some booleans here. We don't want it to be glowing, so does it have like an enchantment? We want it to have a glowing skin. Should it be unbreakable? Actually no, I don't need to have that because I'm just gonna make everything unbreakable in this case. And then boolean unbreakable, as well as boolean height unbreakable. And then lastly we just need a custom name for it as well as some lore lines. Okay, so item stack, item equals a new item stack. We're going to create the item with the type and amount. So if we want it to be glowing, we have to do something about it. So at the end here, we know we're going to return item. And then we need to access the item meta to set the custom properties. So with the custom properties will be stuff like the custom name, the custom lore, whether it's unbreakable, whether it's glowing or whatnot. And then at the very end here, we need to set the item meta back. Okay, so in between here is all the stuff we're going to do. So let's do the first one. If you want the item to glow, then we add a flag called hide enchantments. So hide the enchantments from the lore from showing, so it will look enchanted but it won't have the enchantment shown. So let's just add a random enchantment. I like to add unbreaking. Just put true here. So add enchantment called unbreaking one, and then hide the enchantments so it'll look like it's glowing but it's not actually shown. Next one, if it's unbreakable, we just go ahead and add meta.set unbreakable true. It's just set it so that it doesn't take durability damage for stuff like armor, tools, weapons. And if hide unbreaking, we'll add a flag. That's a flag dot hide unbreakable. Because when you put this to true, it will have a like a aqua or dark aqua colored text saying unbreakable on the item. And if we want it to hide, then we just go ahead and have it right here. And then last two things, the first one is a name. So if we have a custom name, i.e. it's not null, then we go ahead and set display name as a colored version of the name. So if we specify name as something, then we go ahead and color it. And then let's create if lines not equals to null. So if we want to have lore, then let's go ahead and create a list of string. Let's import that, called lore equals to new array list. So for each line that we specify in, we add it to the lore, color line. And then don't forget to set the lore back to the meta. So set lore equals to this array list. So in summary, what does this do? So in summary, what does this method do? All it does is it creates an item based on the material, so let's say rotten flesh, the amount, so let's say 3, whether it wants to be glowing or not, we don't want it to be glowing, but it should be unbreakable, whether the unbreakable text should be shown, whether or not it has a custom name, and whether or not it has a custom lore. So there we go. Let's go back in here and let's do new loot item. And then we have to specify the amount as well as the type of item. So let's just do new create item. And then we want it to be rotten flesh. Material.rotten flesh. And then amount, it doesn't really matter right now, I'm just going to put 1. We don't want it to be glowing, we don't want it to be unbreakable, we don't want the unbreakable text to show, but it doesn't really matter because we're not setting it as unbreakable. Then we'll have a custom name, something like preserved flesh. I'm not the best namer, so let's just go ahead and do that. And then the lore, you can put something interesting like a preserved flesh from a rotting corpse. Not sure what you'd want this for though. Right, then we can do something special like have a text here showing collectible, or maybe good stuff like that. So it looks like an RPG experience. Alright, so lastly we just need to specify the drop rate as well as the minimum and maximum. So I want a zombie to drop between 1 to 3 pieces of preserved flesh, and then the drop rate would be about 100%. I want it to always drop rotten flesh between 1 to 3. Alright. And right here I'm just going to go ahead and create a few other mobs. And I'll just skip right through it and then come back and see you later. Alright, I'm back. I created three other mobs. One of them is a skeletal mage, we got a zombie squire, and the last one is a charred archer. So before I go into these, let's take a look at the utilities. I have two extra methods here. The first one is called enchant item. All it does is it takes in an enchantment, then I specify what kind of it takes in an item, then I specify what kind of enchantment I want it to have, as well as the level of the enchantment. Then I just call item.add unsafe enchantment, and then it returns the item. So all this method does is it enchants the item with whatever I want it to have. Then it returns that item. Then the second method here, it returns an item stack array. It's called make armor set, so you can kind of guess from the name, it makes a set of armor. And it takes in helmet, chestplate, leggings, and boots item stack variables. So the first line here, I create an item stack array with a length of 4 because there are 4 armor pieces. Then I assign the helmet, chestplate, leggings, and boots to each of the slots in the item stack array. Then I return the item stack array. And an interesting thing to note here is that instead of 0 being a helmet, which is the first slot is actually the boots. So it's kind of reversed. So the third would be helmet, second is second is chestplate, first is leggings, and 0 is boots. So you kind of want to take note of this. Right, let's go to the mobs that I created. We got the desert risen, which you already know because I went through that. Then we got a skeletal mage. It's a pink color, the name. It has 20 health, so just like a regular skeleton has. 15% spawn rate, so it's 4 times lesser than the desert risen. It's a skeleton. The hell item is a bone that is glowing, so it's enchanted but it doesn't really show the enchantment, so it looks kind of like a bone one. And then the armor that it's wearing, I just do make armor set. It's going to be wearing an iron helmet, no chestplate, no leggings, no boots. And then the loot item that you can drop, the first one is the one that is holding, so I did this method here to create the bone one. So create the bone. It is glowing and I gave it a name, pink color, bone 1. Then the lore is just like a one made from skeleton bones. Ooh, very spooky. Someone will probably expand on the lore on that. And it has a drop rate of 30% chance. So you can kind of say about 1 in every 3 skeletal mage will drop their ones. And then the second one is a 100% chance to drop bones. Minimum 1 to 3, which I'm going to change it to 1 to 5. Right. Then Then the next one I have is a zombie squire, and it's aqua in color, NB. 20 health as well. It's got a 12% chance of spawning, so it's slightly rarer than a skeletal mage. It's a zombie. It holds an iron sword as the item. And for the armor, it's got chain helmet, chain chestplate, chain leggings, and iron boots. So I changed it up a little there. I'm sorry, I don't know why I do that. So the loot items that you can drop is, the first one you can drop is chamber chestplate at about a drop rate of 35% chance. Then you can drop the chainmail leggings also at 35% chance, chainmail helmet also at 35% chance, and you can drop the iron boots at about 25% chance. So I lowered this a little bit from 35 because it is an armor grade higher than chain, it's iron. Then the last thing you can drop is a sword at 40% chance. Right, lastly we have a charred archer. It's a dark grey in color from M8. It's got 50 health, so it's a whopping tank. 3% spawn chance, so it's very rare. It's a wither skeleton that holds a bow. So if you didn't know, any wither skeleton that holds a bow by default, Minecraft will make it shoot flaming arrows. And what I did is I made it the hell item, I enchanted it with punch 2. So it's gonna be pretty annoying. This wither skeleton is really rare, lots of health, sets you on fire, and it pushes you back, so you're gonna have a hard time trying to kill it. So it has no armor at all because I want to make this kind of fair. Then the loot that it can drop, the first one is obviously its bow. So I enchanted twice, the first one with flame, and the second one with punch 2. Then I gave it some name, called burnt bow, which is light red in color. Then some fancy lore, called this bow is burnt to a crisp but still remains intact due to its special enchantments. I really don't know how to make RPG items, I just know how to do the framework for it. And then the last item that you can drop is obviously bones because it's a wither skeleton. And it drops between 1 to 5, 100% chance of dropping. Oh, and the bow has 100% chance of dropping as well, so it's kind of like a mini boss, I would say, but not really. You guys could probably make like Battle Lord mini bosses than this, but yeah, that's all. Right, after all that, we can finally go back here and change our spawning algorithm to include our custom mobs. Alright, so first and foremost, we want to improve on our little spawning thing. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to do another method here called private boolean. It's going to return a boolean, and I'm just going to call this is spawnable, and it's going to take a location into account. And what this does is I want to check whether the location I'm spawning this in is safe to spawn or not. Because as you can see, it spawned in walls, it spawned in cactuses, so therefore I should probably improve this a little bit. So first up, we're going to go ahead and get the block that is spawning on, so equals location.getBlock. Okay, then I want to get the blocks above it, as well as one more above it, because the wither skeleton is 3 blocks high. So let's just go and do block, which is the feet block. Okay, let me just get feet block, feet block, and then head block, and upper block. And I'm going to do this location.clone.add 0, 1, 0, so 1 block above it. Then we're going to get the block from it. Same thing for the upper block, equals to location.clone at 2 blocks above the feet, get the block from it. Right, so all we need to do is to return feet block dot is passable. So can you walk through this block? If you can normally walk through this block and it's not a liquid, because I don't want it to spawn in water or lava, then that's good for you. And then I just want to do this for head block as well as upper block as well. So let's go ahead and do that. Right, there we go. And let's go ahead and invert this. All this is liquid. So if it's not a liquid, then safe. It's not lava, not water, then we go ahead and spawn it. So obviously this method can really be improved if you want to check other things like not being able to spawn in, let's say, iron, leaves, glass. I don't think those are spawnable on, I'm not sure, but you could definitely improve on this to check whether the surroundings are safe instead of just checking the block that it's spawning on. But yeah, so this is spawnable. Then in here we can go ahead, up here we can go ahead and add if is not spawnable, location, then we do continue. So once we select a random location, and if it happens to not be spawnable, then we just don't spawn the entity at all. So that's good. So up here, the first thing I'm gonna have to do is to change this list to a hash map. So we'll do something like map, entity, custom map. Then we call this mobs. Actually, let's just call this entities again. And this is exactly same as the release before, but I want to have a reference to the type of custom mob that it is. So let's say we spawn a zombie squire. This will be zombie squire. If we spawn that with a skeleton, then this will be charred archer. If we spawn a regular skeleton, that will be the skeletal mage and whatnot. As you can see down here, things start to break down. So let's go ahead and change it so that it's fixed. So first thing we're gonna do, we're gonna assess the key set. So it's going to be set of entity. I'm going to call this spawned equals entities.keyset. So I'll just assess a set of all the spawned mobs that we have right now. So removal, we just put this as the same. Then instead of looping through entities, which is now a hash map, we can go ahead and loop through spawned, which is a hash set. Then same thing, added if it's dead or is invalid. Then we can do spawned dot removal. So this hash set here is linked to this hash map. So whatever it changed in the set, it will get changed in the map and vice versa. So that's why we can call this method spawn.removal instead of calling it on the hash map itself. And next up down here, you can see that this add method does not work anymore, and that's completely fine because well, we were spawning zombies randomly before, and that's not what we want. We want to go ahead and find a random mob to spawn it on. So up here, let's go ahead and create custom mob array. I'm going to call this custom, okay, let's just call it all mobs, or maybe something like mob types. And then we're going to assign this to custom mob.values. So we get all the different types of custom mobs. So when we spawn each mob, we want it to randomize and try to get it from the mob chance. So down here, we do something like double random equals to math.random times 101, again not 100 because we wanted to range from 0 to 100, and then previous equals to 0. And then we go ahead and look through all the mob types. So custom mob type equals to mob types, and go ahead and find if number, or if random is more than previous. So if it's less than or equals to previous, so it's kind of like the same thing as our loot item class, where if it's more than drop rate, it doesn't do anything. So if it's less than or equals to the drop rate, then you can drop it. So in this case, if it's less than or equals to the chance of it spawning, then you can spawn. So let's go ahead and do this. So here we know that we can go ahead and spawn it. So let's go ahead and create a variable here called mob type, or type to spawn. And then we just assign the default value for now. So mob types 0. So it default to the desert reason by default, but it should not be a thing, an issue. So the default to the desert reason. Then in here we can do type to spawn equals type. So if the random number happens to be the correct number for this spawn chance, then we'll assign it to this variable here. Then we go ahead and do break, and up here we just have previous plus equals type.get spawn chance. So in summary, what the hell does this do? I know a lot of you are confused. So what this does, generates a random number from 0 to 100. So let's say 60, right? Then what it does is default to desert reason first. Doesn't really matter, but just know that this defaults to desert reason first. Then goes through every single mob and it adds the spawn chance to it. And every time it adds the spawn chance to it, so this time it'll be a 60% chance for the desert reason. If 60 less than or equals to 60, so that's true, then we found the type to spawn. So we want to spawn a desert reason. Then we break out of it, then we can go and spawn it later on. But if it's, let's say the random is a 70, and then here will be 70 less or equals to 60. It's not lesser, it's more. So therefore, this doesn't happen. You go to the next mob, which is a skeletal mage, which has a 15% chance of spawning. So 60 plus equals 15 will be 75. 70 is less or equals to 75, and therefore it hit that 15% chance rather, of spawning, and you assign this to the variable, break out, and will spawn. So very confusing, but this just makes it so that with respect to each of the spawn chance, it will spawn a random mob based on the random number. One thing you have to note is that in the custom mob class, all the spawn chances here, so 60, 15, 12, and 3, have to add up to 100. If you type the numbers wrongly, there'll be some unintended consequences. So if they don't add up to 100 or they'll add up more than 100, then it'll kind of bug out. It'll kind of work, but at the same time also kind of bug out. So yeah, so you just have to watch out for that. Lastly, we can go ahead and do .put here instead of .add. Then we can do the entity type here. So instead of this, we can go ahead and call type to spawn because we created this just now. Pass in the location as well as passing the type to spawn. So in summary, find a random mob based on the mob spawn chance. Then we go ahead and spawn it and store it in this hash map. And then if it's dead or if it's invalid somehow, maybe it got unloaded or something like that, then you remove it and you can spawn more. Alright, perfect. So let's go ahead and check it right now. I'll build the plugin and I'll see you back in the server. Alright, we're back and you can see that our custom mods have already started spawning. It's gonna go and kill everything first. And it should start spawning now. There we go, we got a desert risen. 15 out of 15 HP. We got anything else? Yep, there we go, spawned on the tree. 15 out of 15. You can probably work on that algorithm by checking if it's a transparent block or something like that. And you can see there's distinctively more desert reasons than skeletal mages and zombie squares. So they're about like 4 times more. See, there's a zombie square here, 20 of 20. Skeletal mage, the bone it's holding is enchanted, so 20 of 20. And if you start killing them, you should see that eventually the charred skeleton spawn. So the charred skeleton is a 3% chance of spawning, so this might take a while. So I'll maybe do like a time lapse and I'll cut to it when it's done. Oops, just destroyed the barrier here. Oh wow, okay, there we go. That did not take too long at all. So we got 2 skeleton archers and 1 spawn cycle. That's pretty crazy. We got 1 charred archer here. We got another charred archer here, and if I go ahead and give myself game of survival, you can see that, yeah, he does flame damage. And he does punch as well, so if you try to approach him, it can be quite annoying, so let's just try to get him to shoot me again. Okay, they're just shooting themselves. Never mind then. Yeah, but you can see that the custom mod spawning kind of works. But one thing you should note that their health does not change, so if I go ahead and remove all the effects right now, you can see that although I'm dealing damage to them, their health does not change, and we need to change that. And their custom mob drops also do not work, so this guy's supposed to drop rotten fleshes. We didn't get the custom ones, so we need to kind of detect that on our own. And so yeah, let's jump back into the IDE. Alright, we're back in IDE and I've collapsed all the methods that we use so we got more space. So we want to detect on the entity def, we want to cancel the drop the XP as well as the drops because we'll be doing our own custom drops. So let's go ahead and do implement listener on the main class. Usually our listeners, I'll decouple them into another class, but since this is relatively small, I just chuck them on the main class, I can't be bothered. So down here in the onEnable method, let's go ahead and do get server.get plugin manager, register events, then the event listener will be this class, and the main class is also this class. So yeah, everything is being directed to this class. So down here, let's go ahead and create the first event that we need, which is on entity death. And you're taking entity death event as the name suggests. It detects when an entity is dead. So when any entity that is dead, we want to see whether or not it's a custom entity. So to do that, we can just do if entities does not contain the key of event.getEntity, then return. So if the entity that died is not tracked in our hash map, then we don't care because it's not a custom mod. But if it is, then we want to do event.setDrop exp to 0, so it does not drop any XP. We can do event.getDrops.clear. So this will just clear all the items that it would drop normally by default Minecraft. Then lastly, we can also do a good practice, which is when it's dead, we can go ahead and remove it from the entity's hash map. So let's just do entity.remove event.getEntity. And then that handles the entity def as well as the mob drops. So up here, we're going to handle a second event, the event handler, and this will be on entity damage. So this will detect whenever an entity gets damaged. So entity damage event. And then I just want to check entity raw entity equals event.getEntity. If raw entity is not detected in our entity's hash map, so if entities.contains key raw entity. So if it does not contain the entity in question, is not a custom op, we don't care. But if it is, then we want to go ahead and update its health counter, which is in its name. So what we can do is to get the damage, event.get final damage, and then let's go ahead and cast this into a living entity because we know that it's a living entity because all our mobs are living entities. So let's go ahead and do this raw entity, and then we have the damage of it. We also want to get the health of the entity, so we just do health equals entity.get health, and then usually this is enough, but just in case the entity somehow has absorption, we can go ahead and do entity.get absorption amount. There we go. So if health is more than damage, meaning if the entity survived the hit, then we go ahead and update its damage counter up there. Otherwise, we just don't do anything about it. So we just do health minus equals damage, because we want to subtract the amount of damage from the health and then display it in his hit counter. Then we do entity.set custom name. Then we go ahead and color. Let's just put a random string in here so we can import this. There we go. And then this will be the same thing as what we did in the custom mobs class. So first of all, we have to get the custom mob. So down here, let's do custom mob, or rather up here, let's do custom mob. Mob equals to entities.get raw entity. So it gets the type of custom mob that it is. Then we can do mob.get name and R and C. So it's the same thing. So we can just go to this class, scroll down here, and just steal the entire thing. And come back here, and then just paste it. And then this one I have to change to mob.get name. Max health had to get changed into mob.get max health. And same for this one as well. Max health. Okay, there's a typo there. Let me just go ahead and change that typo. Boom, boom, boom. And there we go. So everything should be done. Health, damage. Alright, this one should not be mob.get max health. It should be health. Custom into an integer because we don't want any decimals at the back. And that should be it. So a little extra I'm going to do is damage indicators. So if you watch to this far in the video, congratulations, we're going to learn how to do damage indicators. So damage indicators is rather simple. It's just an invisible armor stand that has the name with the damage that you dealt on it. So let's go ahead and up here, we create private list of entity that we're going to call indicators, array list. Alright, then down here, every time we damage or every time they get damage, I'm just going ahead and put the damage indicators up. So first of all, we do a location. Location equals to the entity .get location. But I also wanted to have a nice little offset. So the location is the feet. So let's go ahead and add 1.5 to it. Or actually just add 1, so it's at near the eye location around there. And then I don't want the damage indicator spawn in the enemy. You want to have like random. So it's around the enemy in a random location. So we can go ahead and do that random offset as well as get random offset over here. So the pre-made method that we made just now to offset the spawn also comes in handy here. Then, so what we're going to do here is we're going to spawn the entity. So world.spawn. At this location, we want an armor stand. .class. And then we need a consumer here, so armor stand. So we just do armor stand, and then a little lambda arrow. And what this does is, right after it spawns the armor stand, before it renders it on the screen, we do whatever we want it to do in this method. So we want to go ahead and set it to marker to be true, meaning that the hitbox is practically removed, so you don't interfere with the armor stand. Set visible to false, so it's invisible, we can't see it. Set gravity to false, so that it's floating. Set small, so it is a mini armor stand, not a regular armor stand, so the name tag is actually lower. Then over here we can go ahead and set the armor stand's name. So custom name visible, true, so we can see the name, and armor stand.set custom name as the damage. So I'm just gonna put the damage as a nice little red color, or maybe dark red color as well. I'm just gonna do a light red color. So light red color plus damage. And then this damage is a long decimal, so it's the double. I wanted to cut it off at 2 decimal places. So up here, just gonna go ahead and create a decimal format called as formatter. So this object would take in a string, then the pattern will be hashtag dot hashtag hashtag. So this formatter will just format any inputs to follow this. So not required integer, then a decimal slot, and then 2 decimal places behind it. So if you don't know what decimal format does and what this string is, you can go read it up on Google. And down here we just do formatter.format. Then we go ahead and put in the damage. And that should be done. So lastly, the armor stand is just gonna appear, but then we need it to disappear after a while. So we're gonna need to put this somewhere else. So back up here, remember the list of indicators we have. It's supposed to be a map now. Map of entity, comma, integer. So hash map. So this will be the indicators of the armor stands together with how much time they left until they despawn. So in here, we're just gonna put indicators dot put, then the armor stand, and I just want to show it for about 1.5 seconds. So this is 30 because 20 Minecraft ticks is 1 second, so 1.5 seconds will be 30 ticks. And then in the onEnable method, and then down here in the onEnable method, let's create a new bucket runnable. So run this 20 times a second, so every single tick will count that down. Implement the mandatory run method, run task timer. Okay, then over here, this is similar to removing our entities when they're dead. So let's have a set of entities. We'll call this armor stands or stands. Sure, there's some like random JoJo fans down there screaming their heads off. Then we got a list of entity. We'll call this removal. Same thing as we did with the custom mobs. So remove array list. Then we're gonna look through every single armor stand. So entity, stand, and indicators got key stats. So we'll just do stands. So in every single armor stand, we're gonna check how much time they have left. So integer ticks left. So how much ticks they have left equals to indicators dot get stand. So if ticks left is more than 0, meaning they still have some time before left despawn, then we don't do anything. So if ticks are equal to 0, meaning it's time for them to despawn, then we go ahead and do continue, and then we go ahead and remove it. So removal.put, or rather removal.add stand. So we add the stand into the removal array list, then outside here, stand start removal. Right, but we also need to count them down. So down here, we just do ticks left, minus minus, so we subtract 1, then we put it back in indicators. So indicators dot put stand ticks left. Right, so in summary, this timer runs 20 times a second, gets every single damage indicator on the screen, and counts them down, then updates the variable. If they have no time left, then we go ahead and remove them, and remove them from here. So lastly, we just need to put stand.remove them. And this will remove them from the game. So I think everything should be done. Okay, I was not actually done. Down here in the onEntityDeath event, we just want to do one last thing. When they die, we clear the drops, and we want to make sure that we go ahead and do the drop for the custom loop. So move this down, then we do try drop loop at event.entity.get location. So just try to drop all the loot table items at this location. And I'll go ahead and build, and I'll see you back in the server. Alright, we're back in the server, and they should start spawning anytime now. Alright, there we go. So we got a Desert Risen. Let's go and punch it. There we go. 756 damage because I have strength. Let me go clear the effects. And There you go, 0.94 damage, and the damage indicator works. Despawns after it despawns after 1.5 seconds. The health does actually change, so if I push this guy into the cactus, you can see that it spawns at a random location around it. There we go. And then the custom mob drops, this is from just now, just ignore that. Custom mob drops, we got preserved flesh. So preserved flesh from rotting corpse, not sure why I want this for the food stuff. So if I try killing these guys, let's just take out a meteorite sword. 100% chance to drop between 1 to 3. So this guy dropped 1. What about you? Get back here. Okay, this guy dropped 2. What about you? What do you have to say for yourself? This guy dropped 1. And this guy dropped 2. So you can see that the preserved flesh does go between 1 to 3. What about a skeletal mage? 30% chance to drop your 1, right? Bite me. Okay, drop 2 bones. That's the mandatory dropping. No 1 yet. Still drop 3 bones. What about you? Oh, there we go. He dropped bones as well as his bone 1. So 30% chance. Killed 3 of them. I got 1. What about you, Zombie Squire? I think it's 35% chance to drop his chain stuff, and then 25% chance to drop that. 40% chance for his iron sword, so should drop at least something, unless I'm really unlucky. Okay, he drops his boots and his iron sword. Let's try to find another one. Got none here. It's just all desert reasons. Just to kill this. Okay, there we go. Let's just break that. Okay, no. That guy dropped nothing. Okay, that was unlucky. Okay, this guy at least dropped his pants and his sword. And yeah, you can see that this all works. Let me just check if the charred skeleton actually drops his item. So I'm gonna go ahead and do a little time lapse until the charred skeleton spawns. Oh, there we go. That was not long at all. Okay, so do you drop your 100% chance of your bow? Let's check. You can see that the health, it has much more health than usual, so it takes a lot more hits. But it should drop this bow 100% chance, so there we go. Burnt bow, flame, and punch 2. This bow is burnt to a crisp, but still remains intact due to special enchantments. I forgot to change the dark grey color down there to light grey, but you can see that everything works. But yeah, this has been custom mob spawning as well as custom mobs creation. There's still a lot of stuff you can do, like improving the spawning algorithm, or custom items, or loot tables, or job XP, or where they spawn so they don't spawn top of a tree. But the basics are here, and this is really exciting. So if you guys have enjoyed this, be sure to leave a like, subscribe for more, and leave your thoughts and questions down in the comments. I'll try to answer them best as I can, and I'll catch you guys later. Have a great day.